I would love to explore line 5 conscious side versus line 5 unconscious side. So Sammy, I will start with you. You have a line 5 on your conscious side. You are a 5-1. Can you talk about your 5 as you relate to it, as you experience it on the conscious side?
Yeah, absolutely. I love anyone who has like a 3 in their profile, because I feel like, I don't know, I like that kind of experience as well, or like that's a lot in my chart as well. But it's interesting to hear the way that you guys, say you download, you just have to say it out, because I have the gate 12, but obviously my throat is not as open. And so for me, it's all about more feeling when something is correct to say. Like emotionally wise, I really have to work through that. Like if I just said that stuff to someone, it would not go over well. Like it would not go well. And so it's just interesting how we all have these unique, like, it made me think that, just because someone has a 5 line, their chart is going to be completely different than anyone else with the 5 lines. So I think it's important just to mention that. And yeah, I think that a big difference from just what I've heard from you guys as 3/5s is that, like, you're able to kind of have all these experiences and then able to just kind of, as soon as someone asks you a question, like at the grocery store, or like you said, you just have this download and you just spit it out in that moment. Where for me, I feel like I kind of have to investigate in the things that I really love and get super passionate about in my education. Like I'm, doing Reiki right now as well as human design. And so having that like intuitive, more, I don't know, grounded way of educating myself, so that way then when I go out into the world, because I do have to be seen, like, because it's in my conscious side, so like I have to like literally I always say, like, when I leave my apartment, it's like I'm being seen immediately. And so I think the difficulty, or I think the thing that you kind of have to just accept, is that it's a silly example, but like if I go into a gas station and I'm like not in the greatest mood, the gas station attendant is going to have a different conversation with me than if I were in a good mood. And like those are the subtle things I've picked up on. So having like my own sacred space that I can kind of escape to, I think is like incredibly vital for me. I don't know if that's more of just like the conscious aspect. But yeah, I think I just need more of like, you really have to see me and be around my aura and my energy for me to, get to have the right people come into my life as that transpersonal karma, and have people, meet those right people. So I think people with 5/1s can either be like stuck in either side of just going out, like saying yes to everything and just like living in the 5 line, or they can be all in their unconscious and just investigating and feeling like there's never enough research, and then they get scared to do anything. And so kind of finding that balance, I think, is essential if you're a 5/1. That, yeah.
Okay, thanks so much. Christy, I'm curious, so on the unconscious side, as a 3/5, was there stuff that resonated from what Sammy said? Do you find your experience a little bit different? Could you talk about the similarities and also your specific experience as an unconscious line 5?
Right. Because what Sammy was saying about, and it's funny because I'm listening to her and I'm responding. I'm like, ooh, me too. Ooh, same, me too. And unconsciously though, it's like it just shows up. It's not like I can expect myself to do it necessarily. Well, I can now that I'm conscious of it, right? But still it shows up even when I'm just moving day to day through whatever minutiae is going on, right? And then just experiencing that if I'm not in a good mood, because I'm emotionally defined as well, I never realized that if I'm in a good mood, everything else goes a lot smoothly. If I'm in a bad mood, it's like if I don't consciously change that, then everything I experience seems to be a little harder, a little bit more uphill. And that is the unconscious 5 showing up, that emotional authority tinging that, right? Or tainting that, or changing the color of it, expression of it. So I thought that was, thank you. That was insightful. And it's like just that little bit of awareness. So being an unconscious line 5, it's like there's things that, like I talked to about before, like jumping in and saving the day when no one really asked you to. And things like that, where it's like, well, it's my tendency, right, to be pulled to do that kind of stuff, to fix things, to make things better, or to explain something and bridge that gap because I can see the confusion and without being, basically invited or recognized or, because I have a lot of initiator energy being an MG. I have a lot of initiator energy in my chart, which explains a lot of things on several levels. But does that help? I mean, is there anything else? I'm trying to think. But yes, what Sammy said was eye-opening for me. Going outside and experiencing things, I can get caught up in I just want to experience this. I want to experience this. I've got all these stories. Now what do I do with them? And allowing myself to be okay putting them out into the world to be seen and judged, basically, especially when you're used to being judged or Rotten Tomatoes thrown at you because it's the way someone else perceives you and not necessarily the way you meant for that to go over, right? So it's quite the interesting, balancing act to find out and go back and forth.
Right? Yeah. Okay. I think, sorry, just to add real quick before it comes out of my mind, is that what I'm thinking that the difference is that you want, that's why you guys are my favorite. Like people with line 3s are my favorite people to ask questions with, like too, because usually you guys, So, like I am more someone who's like, I want to take in all that information and then get scared that if I don't deliver it in that perfected form, that someone's going to call me out or of my reputation going down. Where I feel like with the 5 line in the unconscious, it's more like your fear of not being seen correctly or like not having anyone to share it with. So it's still the same, but different, which is kind
different
of
perspective.
Yeah.
Yep. I totally agree.
And also, Christy, what you're talking about, I mean, even though 5 is in your unconscious, you can't really detach from your 3 either, right? I mean, that there was a constant interplay, just like you, Sammy. It's like with your 1, constant interplay, right? Sandra, 3-5, it's sort of that dance. Just curious though, as a side note, Christy, before we get to Sandra, do you find though that there may be times where you might be relying more heavily or too heavily on your 3 or too heavily on your 5 and not enough on your 3? Like, do you find you kind of get into spaces of imbalance, I guess, between the aspects of the profile?
Yes. And I think I figured out why. I have been experimenting with
surprise.
I've been experimenting with being more intuitively connected on purpose in a way where I sit back and allow myself to recalibrate to see what exactly I'm pulled to do. Am I meant to experiment with this? Am I meant to share and show up using this? And so it's allowed me to sit back and get grounded yet again in body instead of playing up here in my mind going, oh, but we could do this and we could do this and we could do this. And then we could do, that kind of thing, just kind of running away with me and going extreme either direction. So I find that when I'm feeling like, oh, I just want to try this out, but I haven't done this in a while. I haven't shared in a while. I haven't put myself out there in a while. I haven't connected with people in a while. And it's like, maybe I do need to go out into the world to kind of recalibrate my energy to come back in. And that's when I tune in and ask, okay, so what am I being pulled to do? Open G. It's like, what am I being pulled to do? What feels really good for me? And allowing myself to just do that and get out of the crazy of the 2 almost duking it out.
Yeah. We did the line 3 profile recently, and that was one of the things we were talking about. Somebody mentioned the word kinesthetic, and it was almost like, oh, you need to actually, like, whether you just need to put things into action, whether that's literally touching kinesthetic, right? Think of baking a cake, right? You can read the recipe all day long. That doesn't achieve a cake. You can learn about cake. You can find out, what the balance is of the ingredients, but until you actually, put ingredients in a bowl, stir it up, put it in a pan, right? Like the cake doesn't get made. And then it's only then when you find out whether or not things really work. Yeah, absolutely. I always love to say the 3-5 is the spicy profile in the array of profiles, just because it is such a, I find that the 3 pops and the 5 pops, and you put it together and it's like, wee, fireworks, but as well, like, because of the line 5 projection, right? And the line 3 with the trial and error. And I find martyr as a name for the 3, just to go on a side tangent, is almost like that's the sense a 3-line has about their own selves and their own lives until they understand human design and realize it's also a beautiful gift, right? It's just, they just feel like, everything's wrong. So I would love to maybe just after this explore a little bit more about that 3-5 in particular as a profile, and some of the challenges you encountered prior to learning human design, and then versus after. So I'll just bookmark that in my open head now.
Awesome. I get lost in that though, because I have that too.
Yeah.
Write it down. I'm like, if I don't write this down, it's going to get lost in all the other creative thoughts.
I'll put it in my own chat. Yes. Sandra.
I have so many things to say, and I don't know if I'm going to remember them all. So I have never thought about that question about my reputation. Sammy, that was like, oh my gosh, I can see that. But because I'm all experimental, I'm all about, am I doing it wrong or am I doing it right? It's the mistakeness about it, as opposed to it being about me. And so I have a really good friend who is a 5-1. And we had this conversation where it just kind of like opened my eyes about the difference, one of the differences between the conscious and the unconscious line 5. For me, it's all, my childhood pain messages are all about doing things wrong. There's something wrong with me, but not about who I am. It's all about me and mistakes. Line 3 stuff. Line 3 is out front. And for her, it's clear that the haziness, the line 5 is up front. And so her experience is that people are always telling her who she is. And that doesn't happen to me. That completely doesn't happen to me. To me, it's about mistakes and wrongness, but not about who she fundamentally is. And so I think that's a big difference between the conscious and the unconscious line 5. And I don't really think about which one I'm in. I mean, I really make decisions, run my life, driving down the road. It's all about instinct, what my intuition says. Which way do I want to go? I make all my decisions that way. And so it's like thinking about what Sammy said about it's like not being able to just go do, having that manifestor energy and being able to just like decide and do kind of a thing. And all of the channeling is like, oh, so you don't do that. That's like experimental. I can see that. And having the identity piece, the who I am piece being upfront as slowing things down. I can really see that. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I'm a projector, so I like to take a lot of naps anyway. So it's okay that I can slow down. I just wanted to add to that, yeah, you beautifully stated that. And it's finding and cultivating that passion for me that really was everything. Like, what do I really want to study, and what do I want to and then things have just, come more naturally to me. And it's also why I like to have like some of my closest, actually all of my close friends and people around me are either a 3-5 or a 1-3, because I feel like, I don't know. I like that you guys are so comfortable with I hate calling it the mistakes, but just dealing, you just like kind of figuring things out.
Trial and error. The trial and error, I think.
Yeah. And I think it allows me to speak more freely without feeling like it's going to, come across the wrong way and not being able to backtrack. So yeah, but that's why I loved human design so much, because I sorry, I didn't have my phone on, because, you know, I honestly started my YouTube channel because I wanted to empower 5-1s, because I had never seen a lot of stuff out there about it, because a lot of us are very like, we don't really want to, like, we're private in a lot of ways. And so, and I am a very private person, but I felt like some of the language maybe, or the way people perceived being a 5-1, that at first they can, like, I didn't feel good about it at first when I figured it out either. And so, like, I think just the more that anyone with line 5 can just kind of talk about it more universally, you'd be surprised how much it can touch people and like change, and they can feel seen. And I actually, Sandra, I know that I watched one of your videos on Karen's YouTube like a long time. It was like right when I just started, and I remember being like, oh, finally, like that projection field was understood better by me. So yeah, I think that sometimes it's like, as a 5-1, it's, or as a projector too, it was like, I thought to myself, well, if no one's going to ask me to do it, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm asking myself to make this channel for other people. And so it's kind of just, yeah, like that, playing with stuff.
Awesome. And Christy, you wanted to add something about reputation?
Yeah, having this conversation and listening to Sandra and Sammy, one thing that just occurred to me is that being a 5th line in that projection field, I find that just realizing that I'm recovering from like eight years of burnout, of not being seen as who I am with mom friends. Okay, so these are friends of my children. And when I showed up in this group, I had the expectation that I wanted to come in and be a leader, right? I wanted to be a very active member, and I wanted to be seen as an authority, right? Especially for my daughter's group, because they were 2 years behind my son. So I felt like I had the experience. And so I went in with that projection of myself, right? Not necessarily true to who I was, but who I felt like I wanted to be in this group. And so in it, I, after a while, realized that, yeah, they asked me to be head of Girl Scouts and the room mom and the, you know, and there's like a laundry list now, right? That they're constantly asking, and me feeling like, well, I'm not really being myself. I'm really being what I projected myself to be. And they're accepting it and saying, yes, now we're going to hold you to that. And it's exhausting. And it ends up, you know, burning you out, but also ruining your reputation, because you get to the point where you're like, I've got to be myself, whether you like it or not. And in being that, you know, there were bonds broken because all of a sudden I'm a different person. Well, not extreme, but, you know, to where they're seeing different things. And I'm not wanting to get on board with everything. I'm not wanting to put all my time into all these extracurricular stuff. And because I realized I was overcommitting and saying yes to everything. And it's interesting how, you know, as a 3 line, I'm just going to try it. Right. But that 5th line, man, I mean, if you don't have a really good sense of what you want and who you are before you go into a new situation, you could end up being 8 years being something you're not. And then in the end, getting kind of burned in the butt for it, and then going, yeah, lesson learned, that one hurt. And having to shift. And like I said, I'm healing burnout like for the last 6 months. So yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, I really talk about that burnout being, you know, crispy fried, and oftentimes, you know, from our own doing, and, you know, back to the basics, back to what Ra said. You know, it comes down to strategy and authority. And it's interesting because when I work with some clients, you know, I'm line 1. I love to give them all the details, right? In a reading, like, let me give you all the stuff and listen to the recording 50 times, and that way, you know, you'll get a different layer every time, and it'll. But certainly the more even I'm experimenting with my design, the more I'm realizing I'm like, right, strategy and authority is this, you know, it's not just the starting line, that's most of the marathon.
Yeah.
And if you're not anchoring in your strategy and authority, the rest is brain candy. You know, the rest is just interesting information to fill your head, but it just doesn't anchor in until you absolutely honor yourself. And, you know, and Christy, you know, totally get it as an emotional authority. That time to make that correct decision is incredibly valuable, and to drop into your body, right? Not being in the head, as we've all been, pretty much all been taught in school, and figure it out and all that. And just, from my perspective as an emotional authority, realizing we're not really designed to say yes to a ton of things, because a yes is in the moment, but fulfilling on that yes can take days, weeks, months, years. And it's a lot of energy. And like you said, if it's not a fit for who you are, if it's not the right thing, if you're, like you said, you're trying to be something you've projected, or you're not, that's not true to yourself, that's a hard road to come back from, that burnout. It's doable. It's just, it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of energy that's hard to have in that moment, I guess you can say. Sammy, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just real quick. I like when I first did a reading, my first initial thought was, I'm just going to start saying, I need a few days, especially with the emotional, the authority part. So when you said that everything else is just kind of like, if you don't stick to your strategy and your authority, when you're learning more about human design without going back and align yourself with the key factors, you can get so lost in how that navigates. Mm-hmm. So I just love the way that you said that, because I feel like every month or so, when I'm learning more concepts or more gates, I'm like, okay, let me go back and refresh, so that way I could apply it to everything else, because it really is that. And I think authority is incredibly crucial for 5 lines as well. I mean, for everyone, but I feel like I would be lost without my emotional authority. I'd be saying yes to everything.
Yeah, out of an obligation, and and if you have a defined will, potentially pushing through that, right? And defined sacral, push, right? Energy to push until, right? Until your body tells you otherwise.